Well, it's a requiem for Mueller. We told him to get out and stop, and if he didn't, this would happen. And now look, he's got so many cases building on his special investigation that the two from Manafort from Judge Ellis are going to go into July and September. So this is going to go on, and he's already a lame duck because Rosenstein came out and said there is no collusion between the Trump team and Russia. So then why does it go on? It is an absolute embarrassment for fake justice. It is beautiful, and more, every moment we turn around, we find that new evidence is being given in these cases that just blow the whole thing open. So, we had told you about Daniel Jones, Dianne Feinstein's top assistant when she was in the Senate Intelligence Committee of the Gang of Eight that gets to know everything. And she jumped off of that after she took the Fusion GPS testimony that was behind closed doors and revealed it to the world, and she jumped on over to defend herself on the Judiciary Committee. She's no longer in the Intelligence Committee, but Daniel Jones, her assistant who had full access to everything, created a company. And his company is called Penn Quarter Group, PQG. And he founds this group, and then all of a sudden, miraculously, the very same man who helped Mark Warner, the senator who worked with Dianne Feinstein on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Wasn't he on the Gang of Eight?
He's on the Gang of Eight. And what did he want to do? Early on, he asked to meet with Christopher Steele. When he heard that the dossier existed, this Democrat demanded to meet with the salacious foreign agent who was creating it. And he wouldn't. Christopher Steele knew it was a trick, so he wouldn't come. But what we now find out is that this very man, Daniel Jones, assistant to Dianne Feinstein, this is the person that would be able to go into the skiff and read the very things that Dianne Feinstein wouldn't have read herself. In other words, the most informed person in intelligence in the Congress, in Senate, okay? This person then creates a company and then gets $50 million to continue Christopher Steele's bogus dossier.
So he starts a company, and his first customer gives him $50 million for this project?
I'm
stretching it a bit.
No. 7 to 10 people gave him the $50 million, and one of them was Oleg Deripaska.
Oh, the guy of the day.
The Russian aluminum oligarch who is as dirty as he can possibly be. And the great news is something he did illegal with Mueller and McCabe just came out. We'll get to that in a second. But $50 million given by George Soros, Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch, the aluminum oligarch of Russia, Vladimir Putin's best friend, literally one of his best friends. They give $50 million to continue the $12 million that Podesta and Hillary had given to Fusion GPS to create that dossier. But remember, everyone gave their piece to the dossier. I won't go into that, but there were many pieces to that dossier, and some came from Russians, Ukrainians, from Brits, and from the FBI, CIA, from James Comey, on and on. Everybody, they all stacked it up into the dossier. And when Christopher Steele got in trouble because he revealed the dossier, he was never supposed to give a copy to anybody. He was just supposed to feed it to the press. And this was under the control directly of the FBI, the DOJ, and Glenn Simpson's Fusion GPS. And so they went to 5 or 6 different, 6 in the end, 6 news agencies and released this information. And in the end, they gave a copy out. And then a copy that somehow got to BuzzFeed got printed. And then after that, the whole thing exploded. And John Brennan said, let's reveal to the entire community through the presidential intelligence update that this dossier is out there and let everybody know all about it so that then it can be released to the press. They were looking, as we see in the page-struck text messages, we can see that they were looking for the moment to release it to the press, and that is when Clapper, Brennan, and Comey decided to give a 1-page brief executive summary of only the nasty stuff to President Trump. In other words, this attack against Trump, this counterintelligence attack against Trump, both under George Papadopoulos, the one that was started in July of 2016, as well as the one that was then given a FISA 702 Title I for Carter Page in October of 2016. Both of those were used, and then they needed to keep those scenarios alive. So when Fusion GPS got in big trouble and Christopher Steele got called out, no problem. Dianne Feinstein's number one intelligence assistant created his own company, got $50 million to continue to help what? Mueller and his investigation.
So when you say he, because sometimes people get a little lost in
Daniel
the he,
Jones.
you're talking about Daniel Jones. So,
Yes.
so I'm like, do you have Mueller's phone number? We need to call him and tell him we have found the Russian collusion.
The Russian collusion is Oleg Deripaska, but it's much thicker than that. We've pointed out many of the Russian connections, but this is just another one. This was Mueller. You know how we mentioned that Comey had Felix Sater, he had Carter Page, he had Sergei Parachenko. Those were all his assets. Well, Mueller had an old asset, and that old asset, also Stephen Halper, now we find out, is the Secretary of State, the State Department's asset that was used to set up George Papadopoulos. So we have all those people all lined up. We know about them, and they're the ones that they're saying the name had to be redacted to protect one of those active agents. Oh, very good. Well, that's not really what's happening. Yes?
Well, I just have to say an aside. Now, we keep our intelligence reports and all of our audios on in an open source, so anybody in the world can get them. So I would think if you're a smart Russian and you're in the intelligence business, one thing you're going to do every day is tune into the American intelligence media to find out exactly what's going on. So I'm just saying, maybe this company realized, oh my gosh, Mueller is so corrupt. We're not going to stand for this. And they came to defend themselves. And in so doing, they're helping good patriots in America to take down this horrible corruption in D.C. So if that's the case, thank you so much.
Go with those Russians. Oleg, what do I always call him? My favorite Russian oligarch. Why? Because he was a friend of John McCain's. John McCain went through all kinds of secret travel plans so that he could meet with Oleg not long ago. Eric Prince met with Oleg, and so Mueller tried to say that they were talking about, something Russian, and that Eric Prince, a friend of Trump, is somehow part of this whole thing. No, here's the deal. Oleg Deripaska stepped in to give millions of dollars to continue the Russian dossier, Christopher Steele nonsense against Trump, which is an attempt for a coup d'etat. It's now a coup d'etat, folks. This is not Russian election meddling, which is a very high crime. This is worse. This is treason. This is sedition. And so Oleg Deripaska was already an asset of Mueller's, and he worked with Andrew McCabe in 2009 when he went into Iran to try to get an ex-FBI agent working for the CIA out of Iran who had been captured. Now, we couldn't do it because not only were there sanctions, but we couldn't use that money to do that because of the complicated political scenario. So, good old Mr. Mueller. But remember, he's a good friend of Putin's, Mueller, because he delivered the really good yellow cake uranium to show that, Putin's uranium takeover of America was going to be complete. And it was Robert Mueller who delivered it personally to Putin. So when we say Robert Mueller was working with another Russian oligarch, that's nothing new. So he asked that Russian oligarch to go into Iran where he was doing his aluminum deals and to try to get this guy, Bob Levinson, out of Iran. He spent $25 million and never really accomplished it, and Levinson was never recovered. But he was that was illegal. Mueller cannot use a Russian foreign agent, to do his dirty work and try to cover it up. And then later, Oleg Deripaska got into a deal with Paul Manafort, as Paul Manafort is very wont to do with Ukrainians and sometimes Russians. So they got into a deal, and Oleg accused Paul Manafort of stealing $24 million. Does that sound familiar? Remember the $24 or $27 million that Manafort was accused of stealing from the World Bank in Ukraine? Oh, that's right. Comey called in Oleg Deripaska from the beginning. He was one of the Russians involved in creating the entire smokescreen for Hillary's Russian collusion with Uranium-1. So Oleg was involved from the get-go. And so when you see Manafort questioning him about Eric Prince, you don't see him being questioned about the millions of dollars he gave to continue the dossier. You don't see him questioning him about his connections with John McCain. John McCain was probably trying to get a copy of that Russian dossier because he knew that Oleg Deripaska was connected with it. McCain went out and he literally searched all over to get a copy of this, and finally he sent someone from the McCain Institute, I believe, to buy a copy. And then when he gave it to Comey, that was so that Comey could say, oh, well, this is the first time I've ever seen it. McCain gave it to me, which was very late in the game, which was a lie. So what we really have is that Mueller and McCabe were involved with Oleg Deripaska in Iran in illegal espionage activities. That's the tip of the iceberg. Then we have his donations to Daniel Jones, Dianne Feinstein's #1 staffer for intelligence. He would have had direct access to the SCIF. He probably would have read many more top secret documents than Dianne Feinstein herself. And so you have Daniel Jones basically being what? Well, let's remember, Dianne Feinstein was the advocate of Fusion GPS. And what does Daniel Jones become? The new Fusion GPS that carries on the same exact salacious opposition research against Trump to attempt a coup d'etat.
And what was that thing that Dianne Feinstein leaked early on in this?
That was Glenn Simpson's testimony, which was behind closed doors. She did that because that was his attempt, like Donna Brazil's book or all these people. That's just their alibi.
You know what's so crazy about this? We see this picture. We're average, ordinary citizens. We're just reading truth news out there. You know, there's so much fake news. And we can put this together. Just simple, ordinary people. And the people that are listening to us, they understand it. And we see these criminals. They are such criminals. They're traitors to our country. And they're running this place. Thomas, it is so surprising that we're not going to be able to take them down with the current federal court system. It is as corrupt, and they are there to protect these people.
Yes, but unfortunately, Mueller is so stupid, and just like Comey. And remember, he trained Comey. That's why Comey is ultra stupid. And they've made so many mistakes that this is all going to come back on them. Well, it's just going to take a long time.
Well, let's look at the judge, this Dabney Frederick, right? She's the judge in this. And this, we said, well, who is this chick? Okay. I like to call her Miss Dabney because she was born in Pensacola, you know. But anyway, it was so surprising when we found out that she has never written an article, published or written anything. She has no qualifications other than she's worked for the cabal. And lo and behold, she's a senior executive service person. You can find her in the plum books. Well, duh, she is there to sit there in her judicial position at a federal court system, which, by the way, we have found out is not part of the United States government. You want to give everybody the big surprise?
Well, Michael McKibben and the researchers at American for Innovation have found the exact document that proves that our entire court system is a chartered corporation.
It's a freaking corporation. These people have gone inside of Washington and created an entire structure where they're operating through this corruptness, through this senior executive service, through a variety of corporations. And I know we get readers all the time that say, hey, you need to read Anna Van Reitz and you need to read this and that. And we would read it, but we felt like we needed to present it better. They had some very interesting information. And so when the Americans for Innovation team set out, we said we need to find the indictable evidence that shows us why and how this federal court system is operating the way it did. And that's what they found out. They found out that the U.S. federal courts are a corporation. It's not even a part of our government, and they've hoodwinked us all these years.
Well,
well, I'm sorry, honey.
How do you really feel about it,
I just
Betsy?
want people to be as outraged as I am that we are allowing these thugs to run our country and to destroy us. And you have people like Mueller and McCabe and all of them, SES, James Comey, SES, are all SES. And they are trying to overthrow the United States government. We need to be royally pissed, and we need to get behind the president, and we need to take them out.
Actually, they had already overthrown.
Why aren't these thugs being taken out in handcuffs right now out of Washington?
Because of the systems you just described. And so we have to work within those systems to a degree.
Not if they're not constitutional. This federal court system is not. Dabney, you haven't done a freaking thing. All you're there is to cover up, just like Michael Horowitz, who's also SES.
Yes, that is their job. But now Dabney Frederick, Judge Frederick, is looking at the indictments against the Russians in the Mueller special counsel. Well, it's very funny. Basically, she says, no, I'm not going to give you a stay on this. You need to answer right now. You indicted this company. Now, remember, this company is one of the three companies of the Internet Research Agency and the Concord Management Group and the Concord something else. I forget. It's all one company. And we pointed out that Mueller's indicting of those people was completely a joke because that company didn't even exist at the time of the election, the 2016 presidential election. It didn't even exist. And it certainly wasn't Putin's chef. And the people who had worked there had been a New York Times expose on them years before. And all Mueller did was take that expose, take some names, take some company names, and indict them, indicting a ham sandwich. And it's really funny because that's basically what the lawyer who is representing Concord Management said. This is just a case of grand jury indicting a ham sandwich. This company doesn't even exist. You indicted a company, and you supposedly have evidence, I can't wait to see it, for a company that doesn't even exist.
Well, is there something like beyond treason?
We've given the ideas of how Trump can do it, and we see some of that already happening. And so what we are seeing in these three lawyers who are giving Mueller seemingly a hard time is that she said, okay, we're moving forward with this case. You don't just get to say they have no standing and then whatever. No, you need to produce evidence in discovery. So where is your evidence? The evidence he is going to show is the evidence that they already showed us, which is all fake. None of that actually links up to what Mark Zuckerberg said was bought by those people because...
Oh, you mean Mark Zuckerberg, who stole his technology to run Facebook from Leader Technologies? I wanted to make sure I got the right Zuckerberg.
And he basically just read what he was given and turned in what they told him to turn in. He doesn't know anything. What he said about the $100,000 and these Russians and those Russians and blah, it's all nonsense. It was the Global Engagement Center. We already have the people confessing to it who did it. So it's complete nonsense. Mueller isn't going to go anywhere with this, and he's going to be simply embarrassed again and again. Now, with Paul Manafort, what's really strange is we said the second that he indicted the Russians that he would be in big trouble if any of them answered, because some of them did answer, and they answered in Russia and in Europe where they are living, and they said, that company doesn't exist anymore. I don't work for them, and I didn't work for them during the election, and I feel like I should sue them because I am the one named who supposedly traveled to America and set up all these accounts that paid for these things, these false accounts inside of America. Isn't it interesting? They traveled to America to pay for them inside of America, and that is going to not be able to be proven. But they were paid for inside of America. And supposedly they even had online contact with Trump team. Scary. And they supposedly caused some events to happen. Some for Trump, some against Trump, some for Hillary, some against. So there's no evidence. Most of these things happened after the election, and it's all bogus. So Mueller is caught with his pants down. We said that would happen the second he named 13 Russians in the company. Because we had already heard about this group before, these supposed Putin trolls, because we looked into that when we were looking into Russian supposed meddling in the election, and we couldn't find any, but we did find some allegations that had happened years before, which even those allegations were pretty silly. So then if we look at Judge Ellis has his Manafort lawyers before him saying the beautiful thing which we said from the beginning. The charge of the case of Mueller's special investigation is bogus. There is no such crime as conspiracy against the United States of the way it's written. Conspiracy against the United States government, the DOJ, and the Federal Elections Commission to meddle and blah, 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 blah. No, that will never. I said this from the beginning, before I spoke to anyone. That charge can never, ever be acted upon. There is no such crime. No such crime has ever happened in history. And it is so hard to prove a conspiracy except in a RICO case. And this isn't a RICO case. And what it was his out. It was Mueller's out. That's what he was going to use to get out. But now he's caught up. Just like Christopher Steele, with his dossier, got caught up by the 3 Russian oligarchs from Alpha Bank and Alexei Gubarev suing him in London and in America, in Washington, D.C. And so we have seen some of these facts of the Russian dossier, supposed salacious dossier. We've seen some of the facts coming out because these people are trying to save themselves in court from going down and being locked up. And that's what needs to happen, and that's the frustration that we all feel.
Well,
and
Thomas,
we fear nothing will happen.
You were a veteran, right?
Yeah.
When you were in the military, weren't you supposed to protect the country against foreign and domestic enemies?
Yes.
Hello, military. We've got domestic enemies. We have identified them. You need to take them out.
But then I found out that the United States intelligence community is completely illegal. We're not at war with anyone. We can't spy on anyone. Period. That's the Geneva Convention. So it's all illegal. So that's the reason I got out. Because it was all illegal. Russia wasn't our enemy. I was spying on them. And then on the other hand, we were giving them the technology to advance the very things I was spying on. And I watched this happen. So we gave them their space program. We gave them their nuclear program. We gave them their telemetry program. I watched it happen. Russia's never been our enemy. In fact, they've been on our side in every war. And in fact, they are probably they should belong to NATO more than Turkey should, in my opinion. I do not believe Russia is our enemy. They're our enemy economically because they're oligarchs and they're oligarchic mafia trying to become capitalists, and they're very dangerous in that regard. But in terms of military battles, I do not think for one second that we are going to enter into a war with Russia. No, it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about the military going in and shutting down Washington. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. These are domestic enemies. And worse than that, Thomas, these people that like your Susan Rices and your Loretta Lynches and your Obamas, they have created so much death in the world. Millions of people have died because of these illegal wars. Maybe it would be just a lot easier to take out this small group instead of having more people in the world suffer because of these people.
That is what has happened, Betsy. The small group is called exactly that, and the small group reaches into every person you just mentioned, including Obama, Loretta Lynch, Susan Rice, all of them, James Clapper, all of them, every friggin' one of them was involved in
John
weaponizing.
Podesta, Sally Yates.
Weaponizing
go ahead. How about Cass Sunstein and Rahm Emanuel? It's the whole Chicago gang, including Hillary Clinton.
Those people still have top secret security clearances and are still employees of the SES.
Top secret? There are no secrets. Hillary left everything on her server for everyone in the world to see except for Americans.
Well, but we have many options, Betsy, and it isn't going to just be a military option. Here is what's going to happen. We've said it over and over and over again. Sorry for those of you who are impatient. It isn't a quick process. Trump is doing the quickest things any president has ever done in history. He is being embattled every single day of his presidency. That embattlement is from the shadow government, the deep state, and all of these vested interests, both rogue and inside and rogue outside of our government, as well as all the transnationalists in the entire world are against him.
Don't forget Serco is all part of this.
Serco, the Crown agents, the British Crown, the central banks, all of them. He cannot defeat them in his first term. As he has now, he has let attrition happen in the federal government. 33,000 employees are gone. He hasn't been able to appoint his 1,500 appointees yet. When he finally does, he has 400 appointees waiting to be confirmed. And he'd appoint more, but they'd just be sitting on a list. So when he finally gets the power that he deserves, And the only way he's going to get that power is to continue to do things like end the $5 trillion climate accord and point out that it was all fake data being produced by IBM through their Nexstar Doppler radar units in America. I mean, he's showing all of this. He's withdrawn us from tens of billions of dollars of UN obligations. He stopped the UN refugee program. He's stopped our participation except as advisors in Syria, on and on and on. So he's done the most that can be done. He cannot start military tribunals against a current special counsel investigation. He doesn't want to. I hope he's taking our advice and he's being patient and he's letting it play out, because the longer it plays out, the more people will be incriminated. Oleg Deripaska would never have been incriminated, and we would not have found the Russian who was meddling in our election, clearly another one, a smoking gun, if we had not had patience. We must have patience, and I know it's very, very, very difficult because we see Trump as a wrecking ball knocking down the wall, and we expect the swamp to drain. But until Comey is pulled up as the plug of that drain for the swamp, it ain't going to happen. And Mueller is going to have to go down before Comey goes down, because he gave him illegally, and we now know, and it's just shocking how many things we said were actually happening and only now are coming to light. But he, of course, gave immunity to Comey, which is illegal because Comey was actually part of the investigation, and it shows the collusion. Plus, he should have recused himself from the beginning. So all of these things are playing out. It's very, very slow. And what we're seeing with these judges, Sullivan, Ellis, and Frederick, is that it seems to be that Mueller's being given a hard time. But it doesn't matter, because there are also at least 4 other cases before Washington, D.C. judges, which are bringing out more and more and more information. And as soon as we find someone to be the Attorney General of the United States of America, because Jeff Sessions is worse than a lame duck. He's an
enemy of the state.
He is one of them. He is now complicit. He is part of the collusion. And when we finally have an Attorney General who even has one eye open, we'll see some of these things progress. But what we are seeing progress now is the failure of this system to actually bolster itself up, to create the support that it needed to remain hidden and to not leave a trail of criminality that is coming to light. And it is coming to light. So be encouraged, people. Be encouraged. The smoking gun for the Democratic meddling in the election with Russians. Now we literally have the Russians. We have Sergei Milyan Parachenko. That's who I keep pointing at. We have Oleg Deripaska. We have Leonid Blavatnik. We have many others that we have named. We have Dmitry Alperovich and his father, Michael. We have all these people that we have named who are the true Russians, and yet they're being ignored. But that's okay, because they're not being ignored by the people who are now saying that even with the crooked polls, Trump has 50% approval rating. Now, mind you, that would probably, if you adjust for crookedness, would probably be 75%, which would make him the most popular president in American history. This is what we're really dealing with. And when he gets the Nobel Peace Prize for creating peace in North Korea, Syria, and Iran, we will look at the one that was given to Obama, which was, in fact, a Nobel Peace Prize for being the most war-oriented president in U.S. history. He was at war every day of his 8 years, 26,000 bombs, 250 bombs a day he dropped on 7 countries that we were not at war with. So what we're seeing is the last vestiges of the people who were hypnotized awakening very, very slowly. And it's going to take a while, Betsy. And I'm like you, I get upset because I know there are quicker ways to solve these problems. But I don't know that politically the pressure would be able to be handled in Washington, D.C. if Trump moved any faster than he's moving.
Okay, I hear you. I hear your measured patience. I can appreciate that, but I am saying I'm sick and tired of it. My whole life now, I realize, has been one lie by our government. Our government has brainwashed us into believing history that never has happened. They rule us from this British monarch. We have the issue of human trafficking and slavery. What they're doing to children, I have no more patience, Thomas. I am sorry. to inform you. I want to see the U.S. military step up and take them out as though they were an enemy and it was serious.